Carlo and Brendan here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhbl.com for sure. And it's end of the year lists. And it's a big one. It is our top 25 albums of the year. And when we say 25, what we mean is 50. Because I've got 25 and Brendan has 25. And we will have some doubling up, no doubt, because there's a bit more likely here than perhaps some of the other lists. It's
Yeah.
still likely to be wildly different in many places. So you've got a lot to experience here. We're going to keep it tight as much as we can, at least probably to the top 10. We might have gone a bit more in depth in the albums. We're going to try and get you through this as quickly as possible. For us, at the time of recording, it's our last list. So we're very excited to do this. And it's my favorite. I can't wait to see what Brendan Scott, and I can't wait to tell you what I've got. So I'm going to get us started with number 25. And it is Raised by Owls, Volume 3, the Satirical Verses, released on May 3rd, 2024. Look, I think this is really simple. I think there's plenty of reasons not to like this band. I get that. But if you can't find anything on this album to enjoy, you're the problem, not them. It's got variety. It's got unique stuff. I think it's one of the more clever albums the band have ever done. Certainly clever releases, and certainly shows that they are talented, right? It's all a joke, we get it, but they're also talented, and this album shows it. So for me, I wanted them in this. I knew I couldn't put them too high because, you know, raised by owls, right? But 25 seemed a decent place for them. So yeah, they're in my list.
Oh, well deserved. All right, so my 25th is Leonardo and their album Grief.
Mm.
Um, Massive fan of the band. I will go as far as saying that when this album first came out, it wasn't an instant hit all the way through with me.
Yeah.
It was helped out a lot by seeing them play not long after that, which really reinforced the quality of some of the songs on it, which had me go back to the album and listen to it. And it's my love for it has grown more over time. I think they're a phenomenal band, amazing live, and I think this is another different version of Leonardo, but with a little bit of patience applied and retrying it, it starts hitting as close to those previous albums as well. So
I second that. I said in a written review for this that I feel that years down the line we will come back to this album and it will be seen as a seminal piece of Leonardo work in the body of whatever else goes forward. It is one of those that needs time. Number 24 certainly doesn't need time because it's power bloody metal. It is The Time of the Wolf Rider by Grim Gots, released September 27th. This was much anticipated for me, and things were going to get heavier with this. I saw that with the singles, and it is a heavier style of band, but still the anthemic power metal ways are still present, but it's developed Grimgott. So you can tell they've learned a lot. Contrast this album and songs in this album to sort of the early stuff this band was doing, and the quality is clear. They've grown. They perfected their style of symphonic melody and power metal and storytelling. Going big, scaling it back, making it fun, making it powerful, making it epic. It's all there. It's a great album, a great Grimgott's record as well. Number 24.
24 for me is a band called Inner Landscape who released an album called 3H33 back in May. I think May the 17th. So French band, post metal. Um, not always my kind of go-to sort of stuff, but I was really, really impressed by it. It's insanely heavy and dark, but also very, very atmospheric. It explores a theme, so it is a concept as such, which is the theme of a family disintegrating and falling apart, and it goes from the very first cracks in the first song all the way through to the kind of final breakup of the family and people going their separate ways and the feelings and emotions and everything that kind of comes along with it. So it's dark, it's doomy, it's melancholy and sad at times, and very, very angry and heavy at times as well. But it's just an extremely intelligent album that you can listen to, headphones on, get completely lost and hypnotized by.
Yeah, this is actually my listening list for this week. I'm having to create a different way of doing things when it comes to listening to things that I'm not going to review because I need to
Mm.
start doing this more. I've been wanting to do it. So I've devised a plan and a process now going forward that involves specific albums doing specific drives. And this is one of mine that will be this week because it's what it is, should appeal to me. It should
Mm.
really be
Yeah.
my jam more than yours. Some
Yeah.
of, yeah.
Yeah, it'd probably be
Uh,
higher on your list.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be funny. Like I listened to it and I'd be like, ah, shit, that should have been in the top 10. Too late now, but there you go. All right, but number 23, one you'll be familiar with, it is the Imperious Horizon by Winter Violet. This was released on the 13th of September from the British black metal, the seventh album, and for me, probably one of their best to date. Certainly the more intense, blackest, and poignant of all. They are consistently brilliant. I've not heard anything bad about them. They featured in other lists on this series at the end of the year here. But this album for me features some of the deepest atmospheric sounds and brutalized blackness to date. They don't stagnate. They continue to move forward. They don't always evolve, and that's fine. But what they do is simply brilliant, and this is another good example of it. The Imperious Horizon, Winter Violet, number 23 for me. You're on mute.
Great. I muted myself. Slightly
Yep.
different in style for me. Number 23 is power metal and it's Fellowship. So released their album Skies Above Eternity. I do like the band. I've always enjoyed them, but I found this album to be kind of leveled up sort of version of them. I think they've done very, very well for themselves in recent years. Lots of tours around Europe where they've gained a big, big following, and also out in the Far East as well, which is awesome. And they've kind of took a lot of those influences back here. Added a bit of Japanese sort of styling power metal to some of the songs here. They were already good at things like storytelling and everything like that here, so they've kept the things that made them good and just enhanced the rest of it to create an album that is up there with the best power metal albums you'll hear.
Yeah, they're doing it well. And I think, like, I got to say, I was nodding along vigorously there. Their fucking Rise Elsewhere is insane.
Yeah, well done to them.
Yeah, hell yeah. All right, number 22, The Unknown by Dawnwalker. Maybe the most progressive thing I've experienced all year. Certainly the more mind-boggling and fascinating experience. It is their sixth album released October 18th. And it is just one you have to listen to more than once because it's a grandness. It's an opus to say the least. It's one of those where you sort of say statements like that and it almost feels hollow. But when you hear this and hear music that's this indescribable, I struggle to write the review this because I just felt like I was saying nonsense words and I was saying platitudes that just sound like you're repeating yourself over and over again. Oh, it makes you feel this, makes you feel that, makes you do this, whatever. It gets boring after a while. But I could find other words to describe it. It is what it is. It's an experience that grows and grows, blooming in your mind, blossoming in epic style, progressively weird, progressively expansive, constantly spectacular, but also just really hard to grasp. You sit back, you think about it, you play it again, and you still end up getting more confused or finding new layers that add more layers of wonder to things. It is still one of my most listened to albums this year, and each time, I probably listen to the album fully all the way through 20, 30 times now, and each time I'm still like, the fuck is going on? Like that's what it is, you know. But I'm fascinated by it, and I love what they've done. It is The Unknown by Dawn Walker, number 22.
22 for me then is Northern Ireland's Lockhorns with their album Red Room, which came out on the 31st of May. Came off the back of them having taken a pretty lengthy extended break where, they took some time to reevaluate. I think a lot of change for them during pandemic times where they had an album pretty much ready to go and then they came out the other end of the pandemic and they just weren't the same. Like a lot of people, they weren't the same people anymore, and they needed
Yeah,
to take time to reevaluate where they were, and very, very clear that they didn't want to deliver an album that didn't represent. Because they could have just pushed the album out there, make sure you're keeping your name out there and everything like that. But they wanted to reevaluate and make sure that everything they released properly reflected them. And to be honest, it's better for it. It is evolved. It's a leveled up version of Lockhorns. You know, to the point where the simple things like they've got an extra string on their guitars, all the way through to some things that just come with age and maturity and experience and things like
yeah,
that just happen to you. They've released an album which is very, very strong. It's vocally impressive. It's creative. It's heavy on technical elements at time. It's forward thinking. It's the best example of why sometimes taking that moment to reevaluate and look at yourself. I think it was 100% the right thing for them to do. Um, and I think you hear with this album when you listen to it, like a band that when like, you sometimes hear like they're in a good place. There's a bit of a swagger to it, almost like a confidence that kind of comes through with it, where you go like you feel like they are just over the moon with what they've recorded here. They should be. So
yeah.
yes, Lockhorn's Red Room.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see them continuing on. 21. Harriet, Devoured by the Mouth of Hell, the debut album. Finally, long-awaited debut album released September 27th. Listen, I get it. If you might be worried, like many are, some people are, that they're getting overhyped the fuck, but simply put, the hype is real, and they've worked their asses off to get to this stage where they are getting this hype. I go back a few years, I watched this band open some random fucking event place in London behind Roller Tomasi and Pupil Slicer, but no one really knew how it were outside of an EP. But the noise was building up, building up, building up, and now we've seen this band kind of getting their dues. This album is it, and I love the fact that even with all of that, it's still chaos. It's variety, chaotic throughout, brutality throughout, dark, goddamn filthy in places, but also incredibly moody, melodic, and smart and clever. Harriet are a very unique band. Their popularity is deserved. Like they've worked to this point, looking ahead, they're going for their biggest headline shows next year, doing the Underworld in London, for example. It's been great to see how that pans out. They can sell out shows. It's really, really worked. But all of it's deserved, and this album is a great example of that. Devoured by the Mouth of Hell, 21 for me.
I feel like I've oversaturated my list this time around with the word post, but I'm going to do another one now at number 21. So this is American post-metal slash rock band I Hear Sirens with their album Acheron,
Mm.
released on the 23rd of August. We're both fans of instrumental music
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
and these guys are great at it. It is a fully instrumental album. It is a bit darker and heavier than maybe some of their previous releases, as they sort of do a focus this time round on horror, classic horror, and like the sort of themes around that, and then deliver that in an instrumental
Yeah.
sort of fashion. So it's very, very dark. That whole kind of instrumental stuff where you kind of feel like this actually lyrics in this would destroy this. Like, you don't need lyrics because I can hear exactly what you're saying to me through the music. Words in it would be pointless. Um, Obviously, as it often is the case with instrumental music, it is extremely atmospheric. It's very, very easy to kind of get lost in it and just sort of follow the sounds and, you find yourself just going down little avenues and whatnot with it. And the next thing you know, like 7 minutes have passed and a next track's about to start. So yeah, hugely atmospheric, very captivating listen. I hear sirens with Acheron.
Yeah, I had to put a lot of time into this record because I ended up interviewing this band. And because of that, it was like, well, I kind of need to know what I'm fucking talking about. So I
Mm.
second it. It's an incredible album. Okay, 20 for me. Kurokumas of Amber and Sand, released August 9th of this year, of course, based on the concept of time, each track dealing with a different facet of temporality and eternity, probing its significance to creation, civilization, and the human experience. Yes, that is just words that are clearly too big to really fathom. And to then put that in the musical form and create atmosphere and environment to make you even think like this is, I think, a near impossibility. Kurokoma do an incredible job of doing that. They do it through psychedelic music, vicious psychedelic music, so it's on the heavier side of things. And this is a follow-up to an album that was already well received and well loved. But for me, this does the three Bs: bigger, bolder, and better. Kurokoma are an example of a band doing exactly what they want to do. You've not quite heard this before. Everybody wants to say, we do our own thing, we mix genres and all that. Kurokoma are doing it in a quite like anybody else and defying all expectations. It's not what you think, it never is, and it continues to portray all expectations as the album goes on. It is fascinating and it's heavy and it's nasty and it's thought provoking. So yeah, I had to have it. It's 20 of Amber and Sand, Kurokuma.
20 for me then is a band that I don't think they've ever featured in any of my lists ever, despite them being a huge band. And that is Icelander's Solstafir with their
Hmm.
album In Helga Fall. Um, always liked them as a band. They are very different and they're not always, it's one of those bands that because they're very, very different and quite unique and quirky at times, that sometimes they release albums and I like some songs and I hate others. And, sometimes I love a song and then I completely fucking despise the next one. And it can be a little bit all over the place like that. And when they
Yeah.
released this album on November the 8th, I liked it a lot. I liked a lot of tracks on it, a significant amount. But then I very, very quickly, it was really rapidly after the album came out that I went to see them play. And they played a lot of songs from this album. I mean, they played a lot of songs. It was quite a long show, but they did cover this album quite fully, and that kind of reinvigorated me. I went back, I was re-listening, and I was now able to visualize that life experience, and it turned it from an album I liked to an album I absolutely love. So it's not my normal listen. It is a special album. It's quite impossible to It is like, well, I mean, they are quite hard to categorize
Oh
otherwise, really. They're
yeah,
almost like a genre of their own, really.
yeah,
What it is to do, it's just Solstafir doing Solstafir things, and it covers a lot of stuff. But I absolutely adore, I love the fact that they're singing it in Icelandic. It adds like atmosphere to it and coldness to it, even when it's like occasionally listen to country rock,
yeah. It's
But yeah,
that you
I
just
think,
said it there. That's what weirds me out about them sometimes.
yeah, but yeah, I think it's a great album.
Okay, number 19 for me, gone all the way back to January 26th when this was released. It is Mountain Caller's Chronicle 2 Hypergenesis, a progressive giant of an album. Mountain Caller perfected. This is brilliant from beginning to end. Way back in then, it felt like it would be my album of the year. It's funny how things pan out that
Mm.
way, but there you go. It's still in my top 25 at number 19. You just listen to it, a true testament to this band's abilities. Everything about it is pure or killer no filler. They've literally got to have their way to perfect this. This isn't even the longest album in the world, and certainly not the most expansive from a progressive rock side of things. But what they've done, they've nailed, and I absolutely love it. So, Chronicle 2 Hypergenesis by Mountain Caller, my number 19.
Okay, so my 19th place then is the band Ceremony of Silence, who released an album called Halios or Halios, which came out in July the 19th. So it's a very, very heavy album. It does have a bit of atmosphere to it, but it's mainly focused on brutality. They're a Slovakian band delivering black and death metal. Um, it's their second album. It's been going for a small period of time, really, but what they do deliver atmosphere within this stuff. It is brutal, it is heavy. It's not designed to be moments of melancholy or anything like that. It's meant to be bang, have that in your fucking face sort of stuff. But so the atmosphere is sort of more of a kind of gloomy, suffocating kind of blanket around the heavier music, But I don't know. I like that every now and then. Is the truth. There's sometimes I want to just be blasted, man, and I think that's what they do very very well. Just dark and noisy, and very impactful.
Oh, interesting choice of words. I used the word blanket because number 18 is actually a band called Blanket for me. And it's the,
I did not know
yeah.
that. I did not know that.
It's the album Ceremonia, released March 22nd. Look, it's one of those that's right up my street, folks. It blends elements of post-rock, shoegaze, and alternative rock into one very lovable medley of genres and one unique soundscape that just envelops me, wraps itself around me like a fucking blanket. But it's also a clear we're not trying to be one thing or another. We're just making music we like, and that's very creative music that I just end up sinking into. Thoroughly enjoyed this album, Ceremonia by Blanket, number 18.
18th for me then is the Canadian heavy metal band Traveller with their album
Hmm.
Prequel to Madness, which came out back in February, so much earlier in the year. Um, Not necessarily doing anything different to what Traveller normally do, just like doing it very, very well again, which is just delivering like a really, really high energy, adrenaline fueled, like non-stop roller coaster of heavy metal, man, with, stunning vocals, like really, really powerful vocals that get close to the highs where I start feeling like I might need
Oh,
to check
yeah.
out, but then they bring them back down. It's like, oh, that was close. As you can imagine what it is, it's like r rolling drums, it's mesmerizing lead guitars all over the place, and just a blast of like energy. And if you're ever feeling a bit tired, man, just put a bit of Traveler on, and like it will pick you up.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of the enjoyable things about that band. Maybe my number 17, less of a pick me up, though, more of a get a pen and paper, time to study time. It's Isan. It's Isan with his self-titled album. February 16th, this was released, and it's being Isan. It's not one album, it's two. Yes, it is two albums, but it's not a double album. Don't confuse that, folks. It's not a double album. What it is two interlinked albums. One that's progressive metal, and the other that is fully symphonic. Two sides, basically, of a coin, and with a conceptual story being told across them as well. Of course, unsurprisingly, it's progressively transcendent, pushing genre boundaries, perceptions, you name it, and cinematic bars with the symphonic side of thing as well. But here's the thing. Don't be fooled by the orchestral album because the progressive one has vastly symphonic and cinematic aspects too. Always to the point where that one is the one I would urge you to listen to. Really? over the symphonic, the orchestral one. Do that as well at some point in the future. But if you ain't got time for both, just do the progressive one, the one that's kind of more traditionally him kind of thing. Individually, they're stunning. Together, unreal. Nobody else could do this. Nobody else and make it work. Isan, yep, number 17.
Yeah, it's done.
Hmm.
So 17 for me then is Australian groove metal band All This Filth with their album Tomorrow Will Be Better? Question mark. Just say you have to, tomorrow will be better. I suppose you have to say it like that. Um, Album came out back in February, third time for them. I do like the band. I do know the band. They are kind of known for, or people say they're known for their industrial tinge groove metal, which for me could be potentially off-putting, but actually they use it very sparingly, and it is just used as like a little spice every now and then. It just enhances little moments, rather than it becoming an industrial metal song or album. I think at its core, it's just a riff and rhythm fest with just a vast array of punchy, aggressive, and catchy beats, excellent drums, bass, guitars, and vocals that are powerful enough to carry the energy and intensity that the music deserves. And then just little spice of industrial every now and then to just elevate it a little bit further, take it from good to great at moments where it needs it. So, all this filth tomorrow will be better.
Okay, number 16 for me, it's Close to Home by Burial at Sea. Hey, folks, it's post-rock. Of course it is. But this is a delightfully lovable album released on February 23rd. A soaring sonic love letter to the places and people that have shaped them. So it's all about looking backwards. Very personal album. And through that, of course, if you know this band, it is a maddening combination of shoegaze, post, math metal, jazz-infused, and brass led music. It's what they do. It is incredibly unique and also very unique live as well. This is a very grand album, but it's also very deep and very lovable. It's beautiful at times. It's incredibly emotional, but it's got this vibe of just like it's not supposed to be sad. It's just supposed to be like nostalgic almost to a degree from a warm and comforting place. Very personal to them. But also one that's very relatable because sort of things they're talking about, particularly as they're from Ireland as well, they're Irish. Do you know what I mean? That exists as a thing as well. It's really just beautiful, beautiful music. I do like this band a lot. I love that they're so weird. All their elements and the things they bring to the table, and it works. It's number 16 for me, close to home, a Burial at Sea.
We have one thing in common for this 16th place for me, and that's that this album also came out on the 23rd of February. So I like the
Ah!
fact that while you were listening to that one maybe a week or two beforehand, I was listening to this one, and that's where the similarities kind of end because this is Uproar and Fire Smoked Upon the Wolf's Back. And this is a band that basically brought me back like to the 90s with a very, very traditional black metal debut release.
Oh,
Um,
right, yeah.
so it is exactly what it sounds like. It is the only thing I would say where it's sort of, you know, I mean, maybe is more appealing is that they don't try and pretend that they were in a cave or a garage or in the middle of a forest recording, on amateur equipment. They use the tools that exist in the modern times to deliver a traditional black metal album with a modern production, so. And I'm grateful for that because that's what I want. Fuck's sake, man. Like, use the tech, so you don't have to, like, I don't know, pretend that the drums are really you hitting a bathtub or something like that. Actually, make it sound like a fucking drum. Um, but what it is like it's very, very good. It is a debut. I think they were very aware of what they were doing. Yeah, it's only 5 tracks long, for example. And they're not like 20-minute tracks or anything like that. They're like 4.5, 5 minute long songs. So they knew like let's not hit people with an hour of this same sort of stuff. But what it is it's just a wonderful no frills approach, just a blast of cold icy black metal.
Sometimes, man, sometimes I want that. Sometimes I love that.
Yeah.
But what I also love is when I'm just blasted with the most intense, savage, nasty tech death you can get. In number 15, going all the way back to January 26, is Legend by Exocrine. The French technical death metal juggernaut delivered an album that was just pure chaos, pure nonsensical noise. It just becomes more and more addictive the more you hear it, the more you unpack it, the more you pull it apart and start to notice the layering and how clever it can be. Its heaviness not just for the sake of heavy. That's the thing. The speed, they're so damn talented. Yeah, this one was an early contender for me, and it's kind of stuck and stayed in the list at this point. Obviously dropped up because my personal taste doesn't always lean towards this style of music. I do like it here and there, but number 15 seemed like a fair spot for it. Legend by Exocrine.
And amazingly, the 15th on my list is Legend by Hexacrine.
This, folks, we generally do not confer. This should be impossible, but somehow the fuck this happened.
Yeah. Like I think I said when we were talking about the songs, we did a track by track for it. I didn't love it as an album. I really didn't. But I did like a lot of it and I loved some songs on it. And that was sometimes that's all you need. Like it's an in, which makes me come back to the album and re-listen to it. And by having those songs that I'm like, oh, I really love these, I start appreciating the band a bit more and then I start understanding a bit about what they're trying to do. And then when I listen to the songs that I didn't quite get the first time around, I start finding more in them. And then, what started off as an album that I didn't see this as being in my list by the end of the year, but I full pretty much almost a full 12 months later, considering how early it came out. I listened to this album end to end, mostly, pretty much weekly, I would say. I think it's phenomenal. And ended up like I got there in the end. A lot of people I think would have loved it from the off. I didn't, but over time, and not a long time. I mean, like, but over time, I got there in the end, falling head over heels for that brand of technical death. It's brilliant. It's a great album.
They massively benefited from you from being an early release and you having it to because imagine it had come out, say, a month ago. You
Mm.
might have had the time to kind of, spend with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think it really helped as well, just like because of the quality of having those two, three, four songs that were instant, like, oh, I love these. That really helps because when you have that with any album, it's hard. Like I couldn't understand why I didn't like other songs in it. I was like, how could I love these so much, but not like that? And which made me want to keep trying them because you know what it's like. We always say this. We probably say this in pretty much every video we do. There is no pleasure at all in not liking a band. Like there's
Oh
nothing about
God.
that. Like, and then when you go like, I just like I want to like this band. I really want to like this band. And then to have songs that I think are fucking amazing, and it's like the drive to go. I am going to get this band, man. I am not giving up here. You know. I'm glad I didn't. Like I said, both for it to be in our list. Like a lot of this stuff is interchangeable. 15 to high place. Um,
Both of us, it's incredible. Okay, number 14. What are the chances of a band reaching its 12th album and it being the first one that I think I've listened to? I think that should be impossible. But
mm,
there we go. It happened this year as the veteran Japanese-based band Mono, instrumental rockers, post and shoegazy band released Oath, which is their 12th full-length album. And it ponders the time that makes up life and how to make the most of that time, while also delivering a very lethargic record. The word is unrushed. The experience is one to sit back and just let it wash over you. It's experimental, combining classical orchestration with extensive shoegaze detail. It is a treat to the senses, filled with so many wonderful, attractive sounds, but it's so relaxed. It takes its time. Everything is drawn out to such an extent, it becomes almost maddening, but so enjoyable. You're just waiting for the next stage of that track. It's unique, to say the least. And I fell in love with it. I really did. Oath by Mono, number 14.
uh, so here we go then. Melodeath time. Um, That's really interesting. I think I can't remember when was it on the EPs we were doing when I mentioned the Melodeath band and said, "Oh, you don't normally get it from Germany," but this is another German Melodeath band,
Hmm.
not the same one either. So this is Hires, with the album Dormant, which also came out very, very early this year, just at the end of January. It is Melodeath. I think when I wrote the review for this, I kind of wanted to just point something out with this, which I think rings true for both of us and probably for every reviewer out there, is that just because I'm a fan of the genre doesn't mean like bands get a buy.
Of
Like, do you know what I mean?
course.
Oh, in fact, if anything, I think it goes the opposite way. And because I'm a fan of the genre, I listen to it a lot, and I've heard the best of it, the worst of it, and therefore I am super judgmental on it.
Yep.
And
If
I
you're
just think,
half-assing it, you're going to get caught out.
oh, exactly, yeah, yeah, more so than it would be for a genre I don't listen to as much because I'm not. always listening out for certain things. But these guys just like it isn't going to like it is exactly what it says on the tin. It is Melodeath, but it is just done to a very, very high standard with very modern production, brutal vocals, like really, really heavy, intense melodies, aggressive guitaring, obviously plenty of melody and catchiness in there as well. The drumming is phenomenal. I think I wrote in the review about it in brackets like this, like think Orbit Culture sort of levels. Um, for any fan of the genre, this is like up there with the very, very best that Melodeath has to offer.
It is. Okay, unlucky number 13, and we're still kind of sticking with my world where we get atmospheric post sounds, shoegazy with a progressive slant, meaningful melodies, but from a more dread-fueled area. It is A Swarm of the Sun with their fourth album, N Empire, released on September 6th. And this is textured to fuck, people. This is one of those layers upon layers. You're peeling them off and finding more and more. The longer your time you spend with it, the more you uncover, the more progressive detail is showcased, to the point where it starts to outweigh the post side of things, and you're more paying attention to the inventive direction the songs consistently go in. Patience is needed. It is one of those again. You're kind of gonna have to have the patience, but the reward is music that makes you gasp. I fell in love with this. It's why it's so high. It's why it's higher than sort of like Mono and people like that. I just loved it. It's an empire by A Swarm of the Sun.
And I'm gonna stick with Melodeath again. So number 13 for me is a band called As the Sun Falls, and the album is called Karmos, spelled Kaamos. They're a Finnish band. Karmos specifically, I'm assuming is a Finnish word, but it references the polar night where you get the 24 hours of consecutive darkness. Um,
Ooh.
the band very much come off of that as a theme, not just in this album, but in everything they do. It's about cold, it's about icy landscapes, it's about that sort of whole, you can visualize it, that whole sort of like Arctic, almost Finnish sort of wintry landscape. And that's what they go for. And then musically, they play their music to try and embed that atmosphere in it. So why it is Melodeath, there is a bit of playing around with it. It's not traditional Melodeath by any stretch of the imagination. With songs that there are a couple of songs that you could almost drop the melody part of it, and they focus a bit more on the death side of things. And there are songs that lean heavily on the atmosphere, trying to give you that whole kind of cold winds swirling around sort of feel. And they do it very, very well. So yeah, it's a very, very classy album.
I am a big fan of those ones that kind of create that imagery of that specific environment.
Mm. Cold works well in it, it seems to, don't it? I think if for some reason, like bands, we obviously have to be good at doing it, but it does seem to come through on the music, as in like you're like, oh, I actually can visualize this. I feel cold.
Well, there might be an album coming up later on that has a similar visualization of cold. Before then, well, technically cold, but also miserable, rainy, wet, and just mean. In number 12, it is The Precipice by Mastiff. Of course, the Hull Extreme Sludge and Hardcore band released this on March 22nd. Listen, this is brilliant, not just because it's more Mastiff. Mastiff do brilliant stuff, and I want the heavy, 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 nasty in my face stuff. But this has evolved. This is them becoming even more creative and showing variety in their sound as well. This is filled with ideas, very clever, interesting, aggressive, intense ideas, powerful, but also feels really real. You'll be beaten up by the end. You'll feel battered and bruised, but you'll still love this band, perhaps even more. It's a tight hug that kind of cracks you back, that kind of thing, you know? I love it. I still listen to it regularly now. The Precipice by Mastiff, number 12.
Yeah. 12 for me then is the Ukrainian atmospheric death metalers Hell On, with their album Shaman, which came out earlier in the year as well. I can't remember the date. I think it was May. I have it written down here and I still can't find it. Yeah, May. There you go. Um, seventh full-length album, but similar to something you were saying earlier on, although not 12. But I don't think I've listened to them pre this album, is the truth. I may have done, but I certainly don't remember ever having to, and then never, so not to the point where it ever had any real kind of impact on me. They are death metal. The atmosphere's bit, it's more that they have touches of oriental and tribal elements within the music than straight up atmosphere that we would like to see in like post sort of music. Um, I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed this album. I thought like, okay, here we go, Ukrainian death metal album. It'll probably be good. It's probably going to be heavy and all that sort of stuff. But actually, it's way more creative than I realized. And I think maybe that 7 album cycle is maybe enough of a trigger for me next time to realize that actually, if you've been doing it for this long, then you probably got something a bit different about you that makes you like, be able to continue on. It's heavy. They mix it up a little bit with some of those tribal elements and oriental elements. It makes it interesting and keeps it fresh when you're listening to a song. They have some really cool guitar moments, like little, I don't know, just little kind of old school like riffing or pulling on the strings or something like that within it. So yeah, it's still an album I listen to a lot today and my 12th favorite of the year.
I feel like they've just come up so bloody much. I think they released a video soon, recently. I think we got somebody email a press release about a new video, but from a track from this album, not like a
Right.
new song. Yeah. Okay. What are we up to? Number 11 for me, it is Mind Burns Alive by Paul Bearer. One of the bigger bands on my list, actually. Obviously, Doom Legends' fifth studio album, released May 17th on a big label like Nuclear Blast. The meditation and isolation, trauma and mental breakdown, framed by the possibility of redemption and escape. So while it might sound like it's all supposed to be miserable, it's supposed to be about building up and saying, look, okay, it's all crap, but hey, there might be a way out, and this is where it might exist. And that's something Paul Bearer did an incredible job of showcasing here, creating and this relatable feeling of isolation and drowning in the mire of a world gone wrong, but also how there can be hope in it and how you can pull yourself out of what direction you go and what you might need to do and how their music can help that as well. It is doom and it is heavy, but that comes from more of an emotional weight rather than necessarily the sounds they're creating. It is ultimately at its core beautiful doom. It is unique with so many different layers and consistently creative throughout. I do like this band beforehand, but this album kind of stunned me. I was like, "Shit, they are. This is the best thing they've done to date, as far as I'm concerned." So it is my number 11, Mind Burns Alive by Paul Bearer.
Oh, beautiful Doom.
Yeah.
My number 11 is Rotting Christ with their album Pro Aristu, which came out on the 24th of May. Had a lot of albums out in this list that came out in May. It's a good month.
What were you doing? Yeah, what were you
Um,
doing? Did you have like lots of free time at that point to just
I
write?
must have done. I was like, yeah, let's grab those albums while I can. Uh, I don't really need to say an awful lot about who Rotten Christ are. 14 studio albums in, lots of change in the band over that time in terms of their sound and everything like that. But what they are and always are is consistent, and they turn out in the same way that they do with live shows, they turn out quality music. I wouldn't say this is like an album that changes the game. It's not Rotten Christ now doing something completely different from, like, say, the last album or two. There is a concept and a story behind this, and I think that's what I love about this album so much. Is it almost feels more like they had a story and they don't conform really to the genre norms that maybe people would have expected back in the day. I don't think people expect it from them anymore because Rotten Christ kind of just do what Rotten Christ do. Um, but the way that they deliver the music that each story requires, that it almost becomes like the soundtrack for the tale that they're trying to tell. And that just, I don't know, it's quite, to me, I find that quite awe-inspiring as an approach to the way that they write their music. And this album, for me, is just another fine example of a band at the top of their game.
Top of their game. Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize them at this stage as well now. Just consistent. It's consistency with Rotten Christ more than anything else, while still getting unique sounds.
Yeah.
Top 10 time. Okay. In at number 10 then for me, it is Drowning Glory by Swamp Coffin. Uh this is heavy, sludgy, miserable intensity. It's very, very heavy. One of the heaviest records of the year, particularly from a misery aspect. You know, it is that sludge sound, but it comes from a black and hardcore place as well. It's everything you know about this band, but turned up an extra notch. But also, like, this means so much to this band. This has come about, like the work that's gone in to make this a reality. You feel it in every fucking second of it, but also like how much they've dug to make this the best version of them they possibly could. there's a confidence in it. There's a confidence in the heaviness. There's a confidence that not only will this delight those who want this level of savagery, but that this can be then played on a live stage and it will encourage people to lose their shit and their mind while also understanding and feeling the emotional weight behind it too. Uh, it was always going to be on my list. There was a couple of times where it fell out of the top 10. And in the end, I thought, no, no, I want it in the top 10. So it's got its 10th spot. Drowning Glory by Swamp Coffin, number 10.
Right, 10 then for me. So this is Canadian post-black metal band Hell is Other People with the album that is titled Moira or Mora or More, something like that. Depends on your pronunciation of the word.
Yeah.
Um, so didn't know the band going into this. They've been around since 2014, so not like a huge length of time. But they actually started off as a hardcore band, then kind of evolved into a post-hardcore band, and then over time have ended up settling within post-black metal. But while that sounds like indecisive over such a short period of time, I love the fact that it happened, and the real reason for it is that their own personal music tastes have changed over time.
They've
They listed the
evolved.
bands that they listen to now, and they have become influenced by them. And I love the fact that one of the bands they listen to is like, and they're influenced by other likes of Garia. So, they're doing hardcore music and hearing bands like Gary and going, fuck, man, I love this stuff. And then naturally kind of started becoming like that in their songs. So, that's a cool thing that the bands that you're listening to are just fans at the end of the day, still being influenced by other bands. And it's like a circle of metal life. Um, on here, what you're getting is it is post black metal, right? It's done very, very well. It's got great drums. It's very moody, very instrumental at times. The vocals are used sparingly. When they are used, they use well. There are good vocals in it, but they do let the music like lead a lot of the time as well. Um, yeah, it's just very, very strong. It all just comes together very, very well. It sounds like a band that kind of have found a sweet spot, confident in their approach, know what they're trying to get to, know what their goal is, what their sound was meant to be, and then have managed to kind of do that. And each instrument just feels like right and like it all becomes sort of like one sound. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you're hearing the vocals and everything going off, but you're not separating them. You're just hearing it like a single sort of sound that's just flowing. I think it's a stunning album.
What's in your list?
Yep.
Right, number 9. It's a theft by the band Still, the post black metal trio Still. And this is quite, as a time of recording, quite recent, only released on November 15th. But from the moment I heard it, I knew it was special and it's continued to be played all the time, even though it is the personification of anxiety in oral form. It is discordant, discombobulating, it is chaos, a heavy wave of noise that draws from genres like sludge, death, doom, black metal, all smashed together, hitting you with force in this gloomy and fused post style. Listen, it is a masterclass in dissonance, listenable dissonance, uncomfortable to hear, but fascinating. So you keep coming back to it. You keep coming back to it, which is what I keep doing. I keep coming back to it. Hence, it's number 9, A Theft by Still.
Also a recent one for me, coming up next in my number 9 slot, and that is Kronos by Earthbound. So look, I'm a fan of these guys. You're a fan of these guys. I've listened to them for a while, seen them play.
Mm,
So I haven't seen them for a while. It was something I
yeah,
hopefully correct. Hopefully they'll be able to get. You know, we can't go too far north, but they're not too far north. So
yeah.
hopefully they'll be in and around London or something to play for this album. But I put it in the list because I've listened to it a hell of a lot since it's come out, and I know I'm going to continue listening to this album into 2025 because I think it is a really, really accomplished release. I've listened to it end to end, and like while I think in my favorite songs of the year, I have a track from this, so it's silly for me to say I don't have favorites, but I don't have like songs in it that I think like, oh my God, those songs are average and these songs are amazing. I think it is just a very, very strong release from end to
Yeah.
end, and I can see myself very, very comfortably over the next month or two doing that transition where I'm like, oh, this is my favorite song for a couple of weeks, and then having another favorite song for a couple of weeks. So yeah, Earthbound in at number 9.
Yeah, I think consistency in the album is a big part of that. It is all very, very good songs.
Yeah.
Okay, and at number 8, it is Coma by Garia from the Mag Portuguese Black and Extreme band, released October 25th. Listen, you already know this, folks. When it comes to challenging notions around extreme metal with a certain level of glee, wickedness, enjoyment, delight, I don't know, whatever you want to say, it's what Gary, you do. It is not out of the ordinary for long-term listeners, but it continues. I think new listeners will be baffled as fuck. But it is still, if you're a long-term fan, them exploring new and exciting locales. It feels like they're kind of nailing it now. They are still avant-garde. They are still challenging and still being weird, sometimes horrifyingly heavy, sometimes weirdly melodic. It's all over the place. Yet, this feels more refined. It feels like they've kind of nailed it down a little bit to not just be too enigmatic and too crazy all the time to the point where you're scratching your head. This feels like this is more anthems than previously, and that's an important aspect. But it's still avant-garde as fuck and thoroughly enjoyable. It's got some absolutely bangers on it. Hence, it's number 8 for me, Coma Garia.
My number eight then is a strange one. It is the album Dark Space 2 by the band Dark Space. It's definitely the most peculiar album I listened to this year. And I know this might seem an odd sort of way to introduce a band that I put in eighth place. Basically started off by just calling it weird.
Yeah,
Um, the whole band thing is mysterious, I guess, is probably the nice way to put it, or weird. They categorize themselves as psychedelic, atmospheric, spatial black metal. Could probably just go with atmospheric black metal and be pretty close to where it's at, to be
yeah.
honest with you. Band formed in 1999. They've had four releases. They've rarely, if ever, been seen live. Their music is apparently being broadcasted from a ship floating in space. And if you don't believe me, you can go to the review of the album in on our website, and there's a
Yeah.
link at the bottom of that through to their website where they are living and breathing this concept. Their website is done like you're on an old school transmission that's coming through, and it currently, because there's no music coming out at the moment, it's just flashing a single kind of old like command prompt line saying broadcast terminated. um they are living and breathing everything about it. It is a single song. That's it, 47 minutes long. um it's what it's an experience more than a song. This to me is like it's art. It's when music becomes starts becoming art, and it's the whole thing combined. Uh, 47 minutes long, weird, mesmerizing, curious, atmospheric, but also quite genius, to be honest with you. I find at points in it it's challenging, at points I like, sometimes it's suffocating, sometimes it's chaos, sometimes it's chill and enlightening. But the one thing that you get all the way through it is just like just kind of in awe of what people can do with when they decide they want to create music, and it's genuinely amazing. I like no one like I'm not going to pretend I do. I don't put this on every morning on the way to work because I would be able to go there and back multiple times and the song would still be playing. But I would challenge everybody to like find yourself, 45 minutes, 47 minutes where you can just take a moment to really focus on it and listen to it, and you'll be blown away. And you may not listen to it again for 6 months, but then you might want to fancy it, having another crack at it. It's that sort of thing.
When was the last time you went to the website?
A couple of weeks back.
Right, well, it's different now. I've just gone to it to check. So I want to see what wanted to not confirm what you said, but I want to see if it was different. So right now on their website, it is just a blank page. You're absolutely right, but they've got static transmission protocol, sender, dark space, incoming transmissions, oral manifestations, terrestrial contacts, transmission upload. So that seems to me they're suggesting they've got something coming.
That does indeed, yeah.
How interesting. It's really
And
really attention grabbing shit, man.
I mean, I love that they're embodying the concept. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, even the fact that they've been around for 1999, there have been four broadcasts to date only. And they obviously nobody knows they don't play live. Like no one's sure. Like, oh, we know they're not actually on a fucking spaceship. I mean, that's the bit. Like, I'm almost suckering myself into here. Like, about to say maybe they're really on a spaceship. I don't think they are. I just think
No,
that they.
it's fun to buy into it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, number 7 for me then. It's The Waking Sun by El Muno, the Brighton-based post-hardcore all-metal four-piece who released their debut album, hugely anticipated, The Waking Sun, on the 10th of May this year. Look, they're already one of the most exciting rock and metal bands now with this incredibly unique, feral at times, but also challenging, accessible in equal measure, just post-hardcore alt-metal sound. It is creative as fuck. Where one of those again, and it comes up a lot of mine. Shorter placement doesn't work for them because one track doesn't sound like another, and the more time you spend in the company of them, the more confusing it gets. But it becomes spell binding. Passion is what this album has. Everything is fresh from beginning to end. It's 13 tracks of 13 unique pieces of music, each as strong as the other. I'm still fascinated by this album. I regularly go back to it, love every bit of it. It is my number seven, The Waking Song by El Muno.
Seven for me. It's a band that I didn't actually expect to ever be on one of my lists, even though I've always liked them, and that's Leaves' Eyes with their album
Mm.
Myths of Fate, which came out in March. I've always liked the band, but like would have been as far as it would have gone for me with often when I've listened to full albums from them, finding a song or two that I really like, and a lot of songs that I think are just a bit too soft, a bit too clean, or maybe not 100% my cup of tea. But I felt like with Myths of Fate that they just found a balance that just struck perfectly with me. I like the whole album. There are songs in it where they are heavier, they have the softer, folky ballads. Fantastic singer, really, really experienced band anyway. And like, so obviously, from an orchestral kind of composition perspective, it's very, very impressive. And I also love the fact that it is like a single album where it's the 12 tracks and then the same 12 tracks again, but as pure orchestral versions of it, which is also kind of cool and nice.
Yeah,
So
it's a
yeah.
bonus, but you haven't got to experience if you don't want to. I always like
No,
that as
no,
well.
yeah, it's just nice, like especially like when you have those songs, you're like, oh, I love this song so much, and then having that, like especially when you got it on a shuffle or something like that, and it's the song starts off, but then instead of the vocals coming in, it just carries on with the melody, and you're like, oh, this is the instrumental version.
Yeah, it's
Nice little
unique to have
bonus.
them on this list. It's kind of cool. Okay, number six. Brendan, do you ever heard of the genre slow rock?
No, because it doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. However, it is what Outlander classed themselves at. Outlander with Acts of Harm, the UK slow rockers released a brand new album on the 28th of June. So look, I'll just sum up slow rock for you. Ignore that. It's basically we get a bit shoegaze here, heavy in the atmosphere, suitably downbeat, but very immersive, very pretty, very melodic, beautiful music. But you take your time, you sink it, you sit down. It's unhurried, it's relaxed. There's been a lot of that in this list for me. Unhurried, post-atmospheric stuff. It is one of my favorite genres. But this is all about feeling. It's an album all about feeling, and you will feel this. It's an incredibly powerful piece. I fell in love with it quite early on. It stuck with me. It's in my shuffle, even though when it comes, I'm like, it'll go be like, oh, you hear some really peppy heavy metal stuff, and then here's Outlander. And immediately I'm like, well, okay, that's different. But I'm vibing with it, and it's fine. Acts of Harm, number six for me.
Not slow rock. Next for me then at number six, and it's a band that featured earlier on in your list. So I won't say an awful lot about them other than to echo what you said, but it's Winter Fireleth with the Imperious Horizon. Um, Probably the peers now of black metal from at least from Britain, but I think like well respected now globally as well. They are consistently brilliant. The album again, it's not that it's like amazingly better than other stuff they released. It's an evolution. It's a little bit darker, I think, than some, but it still delivers the same like high bar. It's like they set the bar quite high early on in their releases, and they're just consistently kind of achieving that or refining it occasionally. And I think the Imperious Horizon is just another stunning release from a band that just don't seem to be able to put a foot wrong.
That isn't it? Yeah, consistency. Okay, then we're up to number five. This is probably the latest released album to get in this list. It's why we always wait to as close to the last minute as we can before we do this, because this album came out on November 29th. But the moment I heard it, I mean, the singles and the build-up had kind of confirmed that it was going to be a strong album overall, but hearing the full thing, it is, of course, Erosion Evulsion by Hidden Mothers, released November 29th from the progressive post-hardcore band. And, well, much anticipated debut album, and it is track after track of powerful, emotive post-hardcore intensity. Some of this stuff is simply staggeringly beautiful. Other is just simply staggeringly intense and heavy. Expectations were fucking high. That's the thing. And the singles didn't make that like even more important. But they don't just live up to them. They smash them to pieces. A sensational album. One of the best debuts I've heard in a long, long time. It was more about where it was going to sit, like where, what position. And I think five's pretty fucking high. And like you said, this is the early feeling. Like it's the more I've heard it, the more I listen to it, the more I love it. There are certain tracks now that, as you do, that get kind of picked out now more than any other as being the
Hmm.
strongest. But overall, it's just a really tight, consistent album. Erosion, Evulsion by Hidden Mothers, number five for me.
And my number fifth is a band called Hellevorn with their album Espectras. Came out in September and is actually their fifth album, despite them existing since 1999. So they're not the speediest of releases, but this is the first album that I've heard from there, so I didn't really know anything about them beforehand. Categorized as atmospheric black and doom, very much a band that they state themselves they deal with moodiness and melancholy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They go for it. They're very heavy on the emotion. They do have a heavy edge, and they do have a blackened tint to them, often through the vocals as much as anything else. Um, I've been hooked on it since its release. It's one of the albums I've listened to the most across the whole of this year, to be honest with you. I find it to be extremely classy. Like, I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but like I find it to be really professional and like really, really classy. And it's in how it's been recorded and how it's been delivered in that, we're applying little touches of black metal to the doom stuff here, but we're doing it in a crisp way, in a clean way. You're gonna hear
Mm.
everything and you're gonna hear every note. We're gonna make sure it's in there. Um, there's a lot of variety on it. They don't let you kind of settle. They just it is always in that, the three kind of things: atmosphere, black, doom. It never really strays outside of that. It just uses the three of those in different ways, with songs that lean heavier on the atmosphere, songs that are more straightforward doom songs, and then songs never really songs that get straight into black, but maybe they have more black in them, than some of the others. Lots of guest artists as well on songs, which they just bring in. So sometimes vocalists, sometimes, somebody playing an instrument, that sort of thing, which just keeps that freshness as well as you're going song by song, where there's a unique component added, as well across the whole thing. I think it's an amazing album.
Wonderful. Okay. Number four then. All right, this has popped up on other lists in different ways, and we've mentioned a fair bit. We've even done a reaction to it. It is "I May Be Sometime" by Million Moons, the instrumental post-rock trio. Yeah, post-rock's featured heavily for me this year. It's been a fucking great year for that specific genre, and this was another fantastic album released July 5th. Obviously, you may notice the title people. It is, of course, based upon the final words of Antarctic explorer Captain Lawrence Oates, and it is a conceptual album based around that and that specific expedition. Seven glorious, emotional, epic pieces of music. They capture feelings of hope, despair, bravery, and so much more. When you mentioned earlier about the cold, feeling the cold, and experiencing that and the environment. This is the album I was referring to. You can feel the icy chill in the air, the numbness in your fingers and toes. You can see the barren landscape untouched by human hands. Snow that has never been walked upon, the wind howling around you. Their ability to capture that is staggering. It's one of my favorite things about listening to this album. I feel like in the summer, and it's like 28, 29 degrees, and I'm sweating my fucking balls off. I'm going to put this album on, and I reckon I'm going to cool down. I'm going to be happy I do that as well. That's why it's my number four. I maybe sometime a million rings.
Uh, my number four is another unexpected one, to be honest with you, because I didn't review this album thinking I would like it, and it's Brothers of Metal with their album Fimbulwinter, which came out just at the very beginning of November, 1st of November. And I remember picking this album out of there because I'd been listening to a lot of kind of atmospheric black, that sort of stuff, and thinking, oh, do you know what I fancy? Just like a nice, easy to write about, 7, 8 out of 10 cheesy power metal album. And, you know, what do you have in the email? Oh, it's Brothers of Metal. Like, there you go. I'll do that one. 'Cause I'm not even that I'm
Safe.
not even a fan of the band. Like particularly, I'm not going into it going, oh, I've got skin in the game.
I get what you're saying. No, I just want to just jump in there. I get what you're saying. I know that what you're describing here. It's the word safe. I do at times where I'm like,
Mm,
and I tend to do it with death metal. I'll be like, oh, there's something described as a nasty death metal release. That's an easy write. It's an easy
yeah,
write, you know?
yeah, yeah. I don't need to study this one, like that. Uh, but the truth of it is like I wasn't prepared for what I was going to listen to, and I came out of it feeling like it was probably one of the most complete end-to-end power metal albums I'd ever heard. One of the very, very best like of modern times. It's full of creativity and catchiness. It's very grandiose. It's got storytelling, everything you would come to expect, but they do it well. And I was expecting them to do it okay. They do it really fucking well. They've got amazing vocalists, loads of variables. There's lots of members in the band, and I think that helps too because that's different ideas and different styles and everything coming together. And it does all the things you're going to expect. You know, there are songs that lean on the power metal side of things with the speed and the, chanting sort of stuff. You've got the ballad style ones that bring the epic and the beautiful choruses and symphonies and all that. You've got the campfire folk tracks, sort of little ditty sort of songs that you can kind of imagine them sitting in the woods. And then you've even got the random as fuck 80s throwback rock song, which we reacted to.
Good.
It's a varied album, but it works. And there isn't a song in it that I don't like. I think it is end to end quality. That's fourth place.
Fair enough. Fascinating how that turned out. You know,
Yeah.
no intention of this, but there you go. Right, top three. Number three for me. It was my most played album on Spotify of 2024. Um, Part of that comes from the fact that so what I do sometimes when I get in the car and I'm doing a shortish drive, maybe I'm doing like 15, 20 minutes, not too far. And I don't really want to spend ages trying to decide, work out what listen to. I just open up Spotify and I go to like my last album's played, and this one always be there, so I just hit play in it and let it rock out. It's City by Tribe of Ghosts, the Brighton-based industrial post-metal four-piece. This was their debut album released October 14. It didn't feature a lot of singles that actually were released over time, sometimes last year, and so on. But how those fit around the songs that we weren't familiar with was incredible. It is a concept album telling the story of a dystopian society living in an unnamed metropolis and how the ruling class continues to abuse and harvest the population until it is a society of punishment, violence, and debauchery, leading to eventual societal collapse. Dystopia embodied. And it might be an overused word, but my God, to do an incredible job of it here as well. But not only that, with that immersion comes an absolute showcase of musical ability, creativity that crosses over so many different genres while sitting in this glorious industrial world. You can feel it, you can hear it. With those postmodern elements that allow melodies to shine, while going crazy chaos at times. God, some of this album can be so anthemically heavy, it is fascinating. I've heard a lot of these songs live as well, and they're incredible too. I think this is better than it could have ever been. It's better than when I wrote the review, I think I love it more now than when I kind of like do when I wrote the review. Now, obviously, I had this a lot earlier. It only came out in October, but I had this a lot earlier. So it's had a lot more plays, which is crazy why it's ended up becoming so high on my list of Spotify or like that
Mm.
late. It's incredible. But there you go. I love this album. It's one of, it's almost like a comfort blanket to me. And it shouldn't be because it is so dystopian and dark and heavy. But yeah, I love it. Number three, City by Tribe of Ghosts.
So my number three uh, is a Melodeath band. It's Brrraaains with the Dark Horizons, my third favorite album of the year. So spoke a bit about them on the 10 tracks of the year and old school in some ways, Melodeath band from Seattle, from the States. They are old school, but it's not like a tribute. It's not a copy of like we're not just trying to do Scandinavian Melodeath like from the 90s and that's it. They have their own elements and they apply their own touches to it. It's aggressive, it's heavy. It is the heavier edge of Melodeath, definitely, at least with the vocals more so than anything else, which are, you're not if you're expecting like a moment of a nice clean singing chorus, like you're not getting that. You're going to get like barked vocals all the way through, but done in a really, really clever way where the songs just flow and they follow different patterns. And sometimes it feels like the dude needs to stop and take a breath, which I also really, really like. And then they just add little touches here and there. Like there'll be the occasional moment in a song that's really heavy and you want to just mosh and bang your head to, where the chorus is suddenly catchy, like whether it's through the melodies or the way he delivers his vocals, like changing the style of delivery, like it's suddenly catchy and you're like, oh my God, this is cool. I can sing along to this. I'm like tapping my foot, So I didn't know the band beforehand. It's only their second album, man, but like I'm all over this band. I think it's phenomenal and it's a great album.
Number three, oh yeah. Right, number two. Oh man, I anytime this artist, because it's a solo work, but obviously with lots of contributions and additional, like, elements brought in. Every time this artist releases an album, it can go one of two ways for me. I always know it's going to be weird. I know it's going to be avant-garde, and so it's going to be stunning. But whether or not I love it is a different thing. This time round, just like the previous one, to be fair, I absolutely fucking love this. It is that catafalque, and it is the album 12 Roman numerals A Gyonyuri Almok Estutan Jonek. Obviously, that's me butchering it as fuck. What are you going to do? Sorry about that. It is an incredibly creative album that was released on November 15th, 2024. I think this is a stunning release from an artist that consistently does stunning things. And no word can the word because it's simply saying, oh, simply it's stunning. But the word simple does not like cannot be involved in this. Tomas Kati, who's the artist behind it, is one of the most visionary artists that I don't necessarily think gets the credit in the same way others do. This band, this artist with his guest musicians, has been consistently creating the most immersive, immense stuff that if it was coming from the likes of Isan and all that, people would be raving about. But because Die Catafalque isn't as well known, perhaps, or isn't as promoted in the same way, the one season it missed, then maybe that's why it doesn't get the same level of attention. But I am stunned because it's madness, unforgettable madness that results in some of the most spectacular music with an array of instruments that you end up reading up and flicking through and going, wait, what? What's that instrument? Oh, I'll Google. Oh, right, cool. Right. Yeah, why not? Why not? This random fucking instrument that nobody plays or like haven't been played in years, created from fucking bone shards and stuff. Like it's insane. But it all works and creates this. I'd say avant-garde is the word, but it's so listenable and so enjoyable and so beautiful. And this is one of the heavier side of the band. There's black metal in this. It's there and it's often there, but here it's kind of ring back up. There's been a couple of times in previous releases where that stuff's kind of been pushed to the side for more avant-garde rock and elements like that and pop. Here, the blackness is brought back, and there are times when it's fucking heavy, but it's still weird and wonderful. I think, right? I reckon the likes of Gary would say that Cat for League have inspired them because elements are there. Like those
Mm.
bands have got to be inspired by this artist because he's been doing this for a long time and he continues to make such unique music. I expect I go into his music with an open mind, and I knew I'd like it, but I can't always be sure I'm gonna love it. This is a love one. It was number one for a long period, but all of this is interchangeable. But I
Mm.
swapped it out, put it at number two. Yeah, I'm not going to read the title again because that's a fucking mouthful. But yeah, that cat fox in my number two.
I mean, I had a similar situation with my number two. I almost feel guilty about it because it was my number one album for probably 85% of the year, just being pipped to the post at the end. And I almost feel bad. I remember putting it in that position and just being like, oh man, I'm sorry. But
Yeah,
my number two is Lutharo's Chasing Euphoria. Like I said, the album came out in March. It's one of those things, man. It's just one of those albums that just connected with me, right songs at the right time, that everything just clicked and it's had staying power. That's the thing. It wasn't like a flash in the pan, sort of like everything's great right now and lost its kind of like spark over time. I would say that
March.
probably, I don't know, a good 50% of that record I still listen to every week, really, because like again, playing the playlist on shuffle, and if some songs that I skip, and then I get to three, four, five songs from this album, never ever skip them. It blew me away when it came out. I just the right thing at the right time, just a mixture of traditional heavy metal, a bit of melodeath, a bit of thrash, which for me was an inspirational demonstration of musicianship and vocal power. Found an instant connection to it. I knew very early on, like I think you do sometimes, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like this album. This is gonna work for me. A song or two into it, I was like, yeah, yeah, this is happening. So yeah, just really, really brilliant album and for like for what I want out of music, and it's like kind of guilt because it was up there for so very long.
Yeah, I get it. And while it's a different feeling for my number one in a sense that I almost wanted to be pig-headed and be like, it's not going to be number one because it's so predictable for me. Like, come on, folks, there is an album clearly missing at this 25. So you probably know what my number one is if you pay attention to like site reviews and things like that, and certainly other lists and things like that. But I was being pig-headed about it originally, so it wasn't my number one. I always want to be like, no, I'm gonna prove that I'm not a weirdo obsessive, and they're not gonna have my number one spot. And then I was like, you fucking love this album. You love every single song of it. Two of them are like your favorite songs of the fucking year. They're in your top 10 tracks. We don't normally do repeat bands in that 10 tracks. I put this band in twice. So they are getting my number one fucking spot. It is, of course, Sugar Horse with the grand scheme of things released October 4th. Now, I should note, I had this album a good month, maybe even longer than that before. And so this has actually been listened to a lot fucking longer. And that's the singles pre as well. Look, it's my favorite thing they've done. And that includes an album that was simply stunning. Is also my favorite thing they did. Everything they did is my favorite thing. This is filled with extravagant amount of emotive atmosphere and uniquely detailed, genre-bending, continuing and mesmerizing way. However, I think this album is their accessible album. I think it's one that people should, if they're not particularly fans or haven't really given them a chance, maybe check out before any other, because there's also a simplicity to this album that makes it more accessible. There are tracks in it that, if you want, can be called anthemic to a degree. You're still going to have a wild and weird and wonderful time, and certainly have to do things where you sit back and just focus on the music, because it's spread far and wide, and you're going to have to open your mind and heart and soul to allow it in. Your patience, your time, it will be richly rewarded, but you'll also find anthemic, this accessibility. The song's Corpsing is a good example of that, but you know the shape of ASMR to come that has elements of that, but still wrapped up in that unique Sugar Horse way. I don't think there's a band like them in the entire fucking world. I know what to expect, but I also don't know what to expect, and that's the joy. And the thing about them is, it doesn't matter what they fucking do. I either love it so much that I want to be weird with the band, or I love it so much that I'm just respectful little thumbs up. Like, either way, I love it. It's just a different way I approach to it. There are tracks in this album that I love to the point of obsession. There are tracks in this album I love to the point of respect. And that's what it is. It is my album of the year. It is my number one album. Sugar Horse is the grand scheme of fucking things. Next year, they probably, fingers crossed, won't release anything, so they can't be any lists. But I wouldn't put it past them to not to drop an EP or something, you know.
Fingers crossed, so they don't release music, so you can give
Give
somebody
someone
else a
else a
shot.
shot.
Yeah.
Somebody else can have a shot at it, yeah.
Okay, so my number one album of the year, the one that hit Luthara right at the post, and it is Garia with the album Coma. Um, I would say, I don't know, maybe in hindsight, a year or so back, I would have been surprised how much I'd grown to like Garia. I remember seeing them. I think the thing that sort of sparked it for me originally was seeing them play Bloodstock actually, and just kind of being mesmerized by what I was seeing and what I was hearing. It wasn't all just about the music or all about the visual. It was a combination of everything and it combining perfectly. And sort of just standing there with me sort of mouth open, like, what am I watching? This is amazing. And from that point on, it's just kind of grown. And then, really, really enjoyed them. And then Coma came out and I listened to the album end to end. And then I pretty much just listened to the album end to end. We've occasionally listened to something else just because I have to, because I've got to review it or something like that before I can put Coma back on again. I love everything about it. Of course I do, otherwise it wouldn't be at my number one. I think it captures everything I would hope to get from the band, but also like, what you sometimes look for in music. It's got the balance in between heavy, the beauty, the melodies, occasionally dark, occasionally sad, occasionally optimistic, and it's black metal, but it's more than black metal. For me, it's the best. For me, it's the best album they've released. But I just find that for me, I find it to be end to end. I don't find a single misstep on it. I don't think there's any filler on it. I don't think there's any weakness on it. For me, it's just a perfect album. You know, I know that you reviewed it. I don't even know what you gave it, but I know, like, for me, it's a 10 out of 10, and I'm obsessed with it. I'll be honest with you, like, obsessed with it. It's dangerous. I'm worried. Get some help.
Well, obviously, I had them in my top 10. I think
Mm.
they were number 8. I gave the album 10 out of 10. I did give it
There you
10 out
go.
of 10. Yeah, I think, in
Yeah.
fact, all my top 10 for sure are like at least a 10. Like, most, in fact, most of the, if not all the top 25 are the ones that got 10 out of 10, or were in that
Yeah.
ballpark. There's some that end up dropping out because I don't listen to them as much. Now, the thing about Gary's Comet is that came out a really bad time for me. I did review it and I gave it a shit ton of listens then, but I had to move on because a lot was coming shortly after it in November. So I've
Mm.
not really had a lot of time to go back to it. That's one of the things that I'm hoping to correct over Christmas more than anything else, because I saw this band play Earth earlier in the year. This album's out now. I'm looking at 2025 and I almost want to make sure that I'm in the right obsessive mindset for when they
Mm.
arrive in this country, so that
Yeah.
getting tickets for this show, whatever it might be, when they play over here, will be like a necessity and be
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
top of my priority. Yeah. Incredible. All number ones.
Yeah.
There's our top 25, 50 overall, with very little crossover once again. And the ones we crossed over for, well, you probably have them in your list too. But you know what? You got to judge us. Let us know what you think in the comments of those and what yours would be too. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website, where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.